LDG Electronics provides state-of-the-art antenna tuners for every amateur need. An LDG desktop tuner works automatically with nearly any station and up to 1,000 watts. LDG power tuners are ideal for portable and mobile use as they consume almost no current and can be powered by internal batteries that last up to a year. LDG tuners are backed by our 2-year, fully transferable warranty and our legendary customer service, the best in the industry. Visit us on the web at ldgelectronics.com.
And now, from Grid Square Echo Mike 48, this is 100 Watts and a Wire.
Well, hello and welcome to 100 Watts and a Wire. It's Christian. My call sign is Kilo Zero Sierra Tango Hotel, and we are now going to be doing a 30-day review of a product from Diamond. It's the antenna, the X30 Diamond Antenna. It's a dual band base or repeater. And you can buy this product if you like. DX Engineering has it, $72.99. Some other places have it as well. Gigaparts has it 4 cents cheaper, $72.95. So if you're in the market for such a thing, listen to the fellows, the cohort that have gathered together to give an honest review system, give an honest review of this antenna. And we'll do that tonight. And so we have a couple of fellas joining us. David, he's Kilo Mike 6, Delta Oscar Victor, and Dave. It's the David and Dave experience tonight. Dave is Kilo Delta Zero, Foxtrot X-Ray. Now you're saying to yourself, how do I get to do this? I want to be able to do this too. How did they get picked? Very simple. They have 100 watt IDs. Okay, so you go to 100 Watts and a Wire, and you go to 100 watt IDs. Now this is just sort of a free ID and number system where we have over 5,000 of these things issued at the moment. You can register for yours there online. It's easy, everything's free. And you're sequentially issued a number sent to you in the email. Then you go over to the 30 days. This is where you sign up to be a reviewer. And here's how this works. We pick a product, ham radio product or ham adjacent product. We send it out, and your community, your fellow hams will review it. I don't review it. I just come back here and I ask questions to see how everything went. When it's over with, and you appear on the show, you keep the antenna, you keep the whatever it is, power supply, software we've done. And that's how the 30-day program works. So tonight, David and Dave are here to throw me the curveball. It is baseball season. I think I can handle it. We'll see. They'll yell at me if not. But this is the Diamond X30A dual band base and repeater antenna. And first what we're going to do is start off. This 30-day review starts off with packaging. Now, you know, sometimes it's really important how you receive it. It could be an antenna. You say, I'm going to leave it outside. I don't really care. As long as it gets here and it works, I'm cool. These guys may be different. Let's go over to David. He's Kilo Mike 6, Delta Oscar Victor. David, thanks for coming on the show. Thank you for spending 30-plus days with this product. I'm really curious. What did you think when it landed on your doorstep?
Well, first off, I wasn't expecting it particularly. I was expecting it to be there. I just got a fairly kind of random package. It was long and thin. I kind of was like, oh, I'm really busy. And I set it to the side. And then I was like, oh, I know what this is. And I said, I can't open this right now because I don't have a place to do this install. But when I finally did get the space available and got everything prepped for the camera, I busted into the packaging and outspilled a bunch of styrofoam packing peanuts. And that is like the worst possible thing in my book, is like disposing of these peanuts. I hated it. It was just a really bad experience of opening it and the crestfallen look on my face of, oh gosh, there's a bunch of peanuts and now they're all over my floor and I'm going to have to clean this up later. So, what was inside the packaging was not particularly protective. It was just a plastic sleeve, but the damages there was no damage to anything inside. I guess the peanuts did their job.
Yeah, and the thing about the peanuts is I can't tell if they're the kind that if they get wet, they kind of break back into the earth, right? And I don't want to figure it out. I'm like you, I don't want to play with these peanuts, and they're so packed in all the way to the top of the package usually. So I feel you on that. I'm not a huge fan of the peanuts, but I'm glad it got to you okay. Dave is here as well. He's Kilo Delta Zero Foxtrot X-Ray. Dave, what was your experience with the packaging?
Well, I'm probably going to talk about those peanuts as well. But honestly, I have to give the shipper props for how they did ship it, because they did a very good job, I thought, of protecting it. It was just a plain old cardboard box, but they'd also taped some kind of stiffener to the outside of it to make sure it didn't get folded in half in transit. It's too bad there were that many peanuts, but they definitely did their job. The antenna itself, of course, is packed in one of those plasticky sleeves, like David said. Those are pretty tough, but I think that where the seams are welded together is pretty bad. And those are easy to rip open. And as I very carefully took it out, dumping all the peanuts into a bucket, so they're not all over my floor, I found that there were some loose items inside that sleeve, and ultimately I had to drive 10 miles to the hardware store to buy a 25-cent nut to finish
No.
which, it's not a big deal, 25 cents, but,
The drive.
10 miles there, 10 miles back.
That's a bummer. Yeah, that's a bummer.
The packaging itself, I guess I wasn't a fan of it because it did not arrive with all of its parts in the bag.
Yeah, that's a big one. And that may show up later on when we get to the pros and cons of this. We can talk about that as we go. We're talking about an antenna tonight, a Diamond X30. And we're doing a 30-day review. Our 30-day review of the Diamond X30 now moves into the manual. Sometimes people are sort of like, I don't know what to do. And other people who are not technically inclined want to have some more information. Let's see what David has to say about the manual. What did you think about this one, sir?
So the manual came in two parts. One is the standard instruction sheet, and there was also an errata. That errata was, I guess, the one I got was the X30 Rev A, and it looked like the X30 had some weird, like, pour out and kind of disassemble the antenna as packed and do some reassembly. But the X30A, the one that I received, seemed to have it was kind of all in one piece and didn't require any like disassembly before assembling. So that all, when I kind of combined the actual instruction sheet with the errata, I was able to get a full picture of what the assembly was going to be like. Although not keeping in mind the errata, when I did go back and started the actual assembly, it caused some assembly issues, which I can get into in the next segment.
Okay, that sounds good there. Did they give you any indication that this was also available online?
It might have been. I decided to do the entire thing off of paper. I find it cumbersome to try to involve a computer or a laptop kind of on that workbench. So I wanted to just go from paper on it.
Yep, understood. All right, Dave, when you get to the manual here, I know you're a technical guy here. I've seen the inside of your cave, and I know that you like to work on things and play with the tubes and that sort of thing. Was the manual sufficient for you? Did it help at all? What are your thoughts?
The manual was fine, I thought. As David mentioned, they also included a couple extra inserts with the instruction book that just did not seem to make sense at all. I think the one he was talking about, well, one of them was in Japanese, I think, which I couldn't read at all. The other one, it was advising me to turn the antenna upside down and gently tap it on the ground so that the sleeve could slide out, which was pretty confusing to me because it just, that's not how it works. Otherwise, it's a 4-pager, 6-pager, something like that, because it's got every X antenna assembly instruction on there. So after you locate the one that's for your antenna, which is just one single sheet, it was, I thought it was pretty plain. I didn't really have any problems putting it together after I just disregarded all the other inserts because I just didn't believe that they applied.
Does that bug you that they put in directions for other antennas in your box, or do you understand that that's I guess they're saving and they just put it all in, it's all the same kind of deal?
I understand it. I don't like it, but I understand why they do it. I can't really fault them for it. I think that the layout of all the different models certainly could have been delineated better. Because even today I'm looking at it right now, and I was looking at the instructions, thinking to myself, well, that's not how I put that together at all. Oh, wait, that's the X200.
Right.
So even now, after I've done it, it still confuses me a little bit, but you know.
David, same question with you on the fact of putting multiple antennas in that, in the manual. Does that kind of bug you, or is it off-putting? How does it make you feel?
I don't like it. I find it confusing. Makes it more difficult to kind of do the work. I've experienced it before, and it's always annoyed me. The install was fairly straightforward, so it didn't make it more difficult to do the assembly. It was just an annoyance.
Got it. All right. So now it's time for us to find out how the fellows installed this, how they put this antenna in line over the course of the 30 days. This is the install segment of your 30-day review of the Diamond X30. David, how did you use this thing? How did you put it in line?
First off, assembly, like I said before, kind of was pretty straightforward. Though I did put on the pole brackets before putting in the antenna connector to my cable to the jumper, and I had to disassemble it and put it back together. But it just took a minute. What wasn't clear was it looked like the radials might have had an adjustment screw, so you could kind of tighten it down at different points, and I thought that might change the SWR, change the minimum dip on the DB. After testing it, which I'll go into later, I realized that they were just best fully seated, but it wasn't clear whether those were going to be used to adjust the tune frequency or anything. That said, after building it, I put it on a 20-foot pole that I had just laying in my front yard, waiting for anything, and just mounted it straight onto the pole, ran it up, put my jumper into my window pass through, hooked it to the radio, and tried the repeater, and I can go into that in another segment. But easy to put up and fairly easy to do the assembly. Again, they could have been a little more clear on some of the instructions, but it didn't detract the build that much.
Did they tell you how high to put this thing, or is it sort of just get it up as high as you can?
Well, being a ground plane antenna, there's no as long as you clear as long as you kind of clear, what is it, like 2 wavelengths or so, you'll be fine. But I happen to have 20 feet of pole, so I just put it 20 feet up. I didn't want to like disassemble my pole, put it up at 10, try it out there, then run it up another 10 and do more comparison. I don't have the strongest back, and getting that thing hoisted up was enough work for me.
Yeah, understood. Dave, same question here. How did you use this thing, and how did you put it in line?
Well, a couple points I want to touch on first for the install. I really like the sleeve that it has on the bottom of that to protect the feed line where you screw the coax on there. I really like that design part of it, just for the extra protection that it gives the joint. And it also helps raise the feed point up above the metal pole, if that's what you're using. So how I installed it was I found a length of pole, just laying around like you have them. Turned out it was only 8 foot. I usually have 10 footers around, but I used them on a fence, so I took what I had. And after that, I climbed up on the roof of the shop outside. I've got those little TV antenna tripods up there, where I used to have some other antennas. Took them down, and they haven't had anything up there for a while. But I left the tripods up there because boy's going to come back and put another antenna up there.
Right.
And so, I stuck it in there. I ended up with the feed point about 32 foot AGL, which is probably about as good as you can get at a home station without actually having a real tower. So, wish I had some safety equipment maybe for that, but
That's a whole different show now. That's a whole different show. Don't get us in trouble.
But yeah, hung the coax, the feed line down, stuck it through the window, hooked her up to some dual banders, and away we went.
All right. This is the part of the 30-day review. Now we're talking about the Diamond X30. Okay, this is an interesting little antenna. The fellas are speaking freely. They own this antenna now. They can tell you if it worked or it didn't work. Many people want to know what happened on the bench when you're testing things out, your SWR, if you did any sort of A-B comparison. Let's go to David. He's Kilo Mike 6 Delta Oscar Victor. When you got this thing inside, you put a meter on it. What did you do? What was your gauge of telling how this thing was going to work for you?
Well, I put it on the Nano VNA, which gave me pretty much everything I needed. I just marked the beginning and end of the sweep. I think I said, show me between 300 and like 700 megahertz. And just give me a sweep and show me what's going on. And I got a dip at 144.8, 263.2, 370, and 444.5, and they were all almost like 20 dB. So well under 2 to 1 SWR. I didn't get the precise SWR numbers because that was I was just kind of going for the resonant frequencies. So I knew that it was going to be really a fine antenna in the ham bands as long as it held up to the VNA. So then I put it on the radio after I mounted up outside, and got on to got on the repeater and just to see who was out there listening. And one of my buddies up the mountain a little bit came back, and he was mobile at the time, about to pull into his driveway, but he was happy to do a test. And the repeater, it was full quieting into the repeater. There was no problem at all. And I generally have full quieting into the repeater with my Edfong J pole that I've been using for years out there. So I was not surprised that I was going to have good performance. But my buddy having line of sight to my house, I said, well, let's switch over to Simplex and give that a shot. And he's like, yeah, let's QSY over to 520 and just see if we can make contact. And I did. Contact was it was S7, really good sound. Then I went back to the Edfong and tried that, and it was like S1 or 2, could barely hear him. He was scratchy. It was a copyable, but it went from like it was a Circuit Merit 5 on the Diamond, and it was like a Circuit Merit 3 on the Edfong. And that said, the Edfong is on a 20-foot feed line, and all I had sitting around other than that was 50 feet, and that was RG8X on both of those. But the Diamond putting 50 feet of RG8 turned out to be just better overall contact than the Edfong with a 20-foot feed line. So I was really pleased with the performance, though the height above ground could have played a role in that too, because getting that at 20 feet was pretty much had the top of the antenna over the crest of my roof, meaning I had very few obstructions, if any, versus 10 feet on the Edfong, which put it below the roof, the top of the roof, meaning I was getting shadowed into my buddy's place.
Okay, cool. So your first out of the box contact, you could do a little A and B, you could do a little simplex work, and okay, got a good review of your first sort of bench test. We'll talk a little bit more in a little bit about as the days rolled out and you got to use it a little bit more.
And then I have a 440 story as well. So
is that for now or is that for the performance?
We'll do that in performance. We'll do that in performance.
All right, hang tight there. All right, that was David's side of that there for his AB bench test, sort of a sweeping of the band to see how things played out. Let's see what Dave did. Kilo Delta Zero Foxtrot X-Ray. Let's talk about how you AB'd this a little bit, or if you did, or what when you hooked it up, what you found on the meters.
Okay, well, I did do an AB on that. My go-to is Arrow Antenna dual band J pole, which I think is a great antenna if anybody is thinking about that as well. Build quality in that is spectacular because it's made out of solid aluminum there, and it gives spectacular performance. Like I said, when I hook a swear meter up to that, the needle barely even moves across the 2 meter band. The entire 2 meter band, it's like at 1.1 to 1.2. So this Diamond antenna has some pretty stiff competition as far as that goes. But I was interested in this Diamond antenna when you sent it out because it boasts the 3 dB gain on 2 meters, whereas the Arrow antenna J pole is 0 gain. So I wanted to see how that worked. So I got the X30 up there, and I don't have a VNA meter, though I was thinking pretty hard about buying one after I put that up there. All I had was my my little dual band swear meters, but I spun the dial around the different bands and collected some measurements and compared them to the charts that they included in their instructions, their manuals. And on the 2 meter bands, it was as good as or beat their published figures there in the manual. So not bad. I had a high of like 1.6 on the band edge, which, you're probably not really going to spend a lot of time there on the band edges. But right there in the sweet spot, 145, 146, it was 1.3 or less. And on the 70 centimeter bands, it didn't perform quite as well as what their published specs were. I think I had 1.7 on the band edges, with a low of 1.6 or 1.5 in the other places. So, and that's perfectly fine for an antenna like that. It's certainly not going to be a disappointment if you get, a score of 1.5 or 1.6. So, I guess I don't really have any complaints about it. It was a solid performer as far as the tests go.
Got it. All right, we're moving into that performance space now. The guy's got to spend 30 days, maybe a little bit longer, depending, with this antenna, getting to work it, beat it up. That's what we're looking for here in the 30-day review, is that your peers and members of our community take this stuff out there and beat it up. I mean, not physically seeing how tough it is, but kind of, in the elements and all that stuff. Here we are in the new year, and heading into spring and all that stuff. So they were reviewing during a time where they could have been getting some weather. We'll see how the performance aspect of the Diamond X30 went. Let's start with David. Now, over the time, you got to spend a few weeks, 4 weeks or more with the antenna once it was up there. What did you make of it in terms of your day-to-day or every other day, or how often you work on the radio in terms of performance for you?
Well, on the radio, pretty much at least once a day. So we have a very active Aries community here, and our Aries repeater is always there's always somebody there to talk to, and plenty of opportunities. So nothing but great signal reports, especially on 2 meter. On 440. It was so much heads and shoulders above the Edfong J-pole. I was able to work a repeater that's normally fringy and sporadic, and just full quieting into that repeater. So I was really impressed with its 440 performance. Physically, while I was inside and just sort of setting up on the radio, the wind picked up. I just kind of had the mast leaning against the house for a few minutes while I was kind of going back and forth to the house, and it blew down, and it folded. It kind of bent 2 of the radials, which I was able to bend them right back into place. They were straightened out, so it wasn't cheapo metal in the radials, but it survived the crash. It was onto fairly soft earth, but I was just glad that nothing shattered, and it just continued to work despite a really hard fall.
Okay, thank you for that. And I've done that before too. Actually, mine didn't just fall over. I lost control of, I don't have this antenna, but one similar to it, and I had the same thing, bent up the radials, and they ended up going back into place. So I've been there where you are. Dave, let's talk about the performance over 30 days. I don't know how often you're on the radio or played around with this thing, but how did she do for you?
Well, I'm not a big VHF or UHF user, but I tried to give it my best shot to make sure that we had a decent review on that. I live 20 miles or so from our nearest repeater, 30 miles or so from the one I usually use, and I was able to hit the regular repeaters I use with no issues, full quieting, fully legible, very strong signal. So it really did pretty well on that. On the other hand, I was not able to hit any of the repeaters that I can't normally hit. So I didn't gain a whole lot with that extra 3 dB of gain that they're advertising. But I think it would take a lot more antenna to be able to hit the ones that I couldn't hit, a lot more height. And I think that's basically it's got the same limitations of any VHF antenna. You've got same horizon no matter what. So that ended up being the limitation on that antenna. As far as simplex goes, I wasn't able to test that very much at all. I was hunting around on 5.2 for some cars passing by, but there's not a whole lot out there for that. But the few contacts I was able to make, I still had good signal reports. But I wouldn't say that the antenna allowed me to speak any farther than my old standby, the Arrow antenna J-pole. So in this particular case, I didn't gain anything else. I do out here have an awful lot of wind. Today we're hitting 40-mile-an-hour gusts.
Where are you?
Well, I'm right in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. So around me is the cornfield on 4 sides, and there's no corn anyway right now. So it's flat earth for some miles in any direction that you choose to pick. So plenty of wind. And I know that I think it was last week we had probably some 60, 65 mile an hour winds, and there was no danger of any kind to that antenna. The wind load that it was presenting was it was nothing.
Okay. David, what part of the country are you in?
Rural coastal San Mateo County, California.
Okay. All right, so that'll give us a little bit of geography and what you're working with technically in the space that you're in. Okay, good deal on that. All right, so this is the part of the 30-day review where we get into the curb appeal. Now, David's told us he lives out there among the cornfields, and that may not matter. It may matter to his partner, whoever he hangs out with the most, or the neighbor down the way. We're going to find out here just how it looks when it goes up there. And let's talk to David. In terms of curb appeal, is this something that you feel comfortable putting up for the neighbors, whomever may be seeing this?
Well, my house is deep set into my property. I've got 2.5 acres. My house is in the middle of it. And it's a long 2.5 acres. So it's a long way. It's like 300 feet down to the driveway. Nobody's going to see the thing. If they do come out the driveway, I don't care that they see antennas. Nobody's here to complain about it. As a matter of fact, people in the community know that I'm a ham operator with emergency communications, affiliated with our CERT team, and that I'm a community resource for radios and communication when we get power outages, fires, and that sort of thing. So it's a little bit of a flagpole announcing that I'm available for communications to the community. So curb appeal was not an issue. If anything, it's a little bit of a bragging right, and it's less janky than my Ed Fong install, but that's entirely my fault as well, because on that one I just kind of zip tied it to the top of a pole, versus the nice thing about the Diamond was that it had the pole clamps with it, so it's really firmly attached to that pole and it's nice and straight. Sitting a proud vertical on that. I was a little worried that the radials would look a little bit antenna-y and a little bit junky, but they don't. They're short. They're not visually overbearing. It's just an effective arrangement. That though I will say I felt like the antenna was a little shorter physically than it appears in the photo. Just the dimensions didn't really give it justice to how short of an antenna this actually is, which when I judged it by the dB gain and judged it by the just in general looking at the picture, I thought it was going to be a longer antenna, and I was kind of pleasantly surprised in the performance of a short antenna.
So your neighbors know you as that guy, and you're cool with the look of it, so where you live, you're okay with that. What about those that maybe live in an HOA or something like that? Guys that are not like you, who may put this up in different situations. Do you think it's aesthetically okay?
No, it is not a city antenna. If you got your own house and you don't have an HOA, I think it'll be you're fine to put it up. If you can put up outdoor antennas, you're just fine doing so. But HOA is going to notice and they're not going to like it. Um, it may be possible, since it's a short antenna, you may be able to get this thing up into an attic. Uh, so just do a short tripod, and if your attic is tall enough, you can fit this thing in there. If you bring up the picture, I think it shows what the actual length of the physical antenna is. It might be there in the notes, but it is kind of stubby, which is not necessarily a bad thing. If you're it's better to put something in your attic than nothing nothing at all.
Okay. So yeah, all that information should be available on any of the, the manufacturer, the sellers actually. DX Engineering, Gigaparts has it. Dave, same question to you. You tipped off that you were out there in the middle of it, and probably not too many obstacles to overcome in terms of a visual sight line. But I don't know. You might have that neighbor that's close enough to you that's just the PETA. So I want to get the skinny from you, Dave. What do you think in terms of curb appeal? How does it suit you personally, and how may it suit neighbors or people, passersby?
Well, first, let me say that speaking as a ham guy, I think this antenna is absolutely sexy. I super love this kind of design with the enclosed elements and the tiny little radials on the side. Myself, I don't have a neighbor for at least a mile. The antenna is mounted, 100 and some feet from the road. So I think as far as the curb appeal goes, you really can't even see that from the road. With the small white tube, and the radials aren't long enough to really even notice. The tripod that's holding it up is way more noticeable than anything about the antenna itself. If we're going to talk about HOAs, yeah, that's a non-starter. That's never gonna work unless you can come up with some way to disguise it.
Doesn't look like a bird feeder, huh?
It does not, and I don't think it's strong enough to hang a flag off of it.
Okie dokie. There you have it from the fellas. A 30-day review now. We're going to get into the pros and the cons. This is kind of what you're waiting for. You want to know about the performance, how it comes to you, how it tested on the bench. But we want to get into the pros and cons because we don't want to spend your money. We want you to decide. And we have a couple of people who spent some time with this antenna, and they're going to give us the pros and cons on it. Let's start with David. David, you can go down the list, and you can say whatever you need to say. And I might have a follow-up question here because I'm really curious. And we looked at the price point here, $72.99 at DX Engineering. 4 cents cheaper, it looks like, over at Gigaparts. But still, $73 is, I don't know if I'd pop on something like that. So I'm going to need a little more information. Let's talk about what you found to be the pros and the cons of this particular Diamond X30.
Well, pros, definitely happy with the performance compared to what I had before. I didn't compare it to a wide range of antennas because I don't have a wide range, but it sure beat the Edfong, and it sure beat the roll-up J-pole in the bedroom window for the other radio. I think that the performance was just fine. 3.3 dB gain is not great as far as kind of working those more distant repeaters. Something you'd get out of like a collinear stack or something like that, but or something directional. So performance was great for the package. No complaints at all there. Um, let's see. It did seem a little weaker in the 440 range, although Dave was kind of brought it up that the SWR was slightly worse in that range. So I'd say this is a better 2 meter antenna than 440, but I wouldn't turn it down. I As far as the price point, if you're willing to spend under $100 on a good antenna, I'd definitely go with this.
All right, good there you go. There's some pros, no cons to it, except for the fact that if you're in an HOA, you need to think about that. It's not something, both of the fellas said, you're not going to put this up there. It's just a headache for you there. But you're an MCOM guy also. Is this something you think you could see yourself taking out in the field, say if it's not in a permanent install?
I would not take this in the field. Reason being the radials are just kind of they're too much in the way. It would disassemble. You could deploy it out there, but quite honestly, that's where the EdFong is going to go, because it's all straight and contained. It packs easily. There's no assembly required other than kind of just getting mounted to a pole. So I would go with the EdFong for MCOM portable deployments, and stick with the Diamond at the base.
All right, good deal. I'll come back to you and pick up your overall rating in just a minute. Dave, let's talk about the pros and cons. You hinted at a little bit of a packing issue earlier in the show. Tell me what you make of this on the good and the bad.
Honestly, I really would be pressed to come up with any cons, like David said. It really is a pretty good, basic, dual band antenna. For that price point, I don't really think you're going to do a whole lot better.
Would you buy it? Would you buy it with your money? Would that be something? I know you said you don't operate as much on that, but I mean, if you were a 2-meter guy, 440 guy, is this something you'd pop on?
I think so. In the world of the VHF, UHF antennas, I think the $73 is pretty reasonable for what you're getting there. And if you want something that has a little bit more bang or more oomph behind the signal, you're going to be switching over to a directional antenna of some kind anyway. But this, if you get it at the height that it needs to get to clear your obstructions, I think it's going to hit whatever's in your area.
Okay. Now let's go to the overall rating. We do a 5.5 to a 5.9. David, Kilo Mike 6, Delta Oscar Victor. What kind of report do you give this one?
I give it a 5.8 based on the manual alone. Just that I just dock it a point for the manual. Other than that, performance-wise, I think it's an absolute great thing. I think, but a good solid 5.8 and the only deduction for the manual.
All right.
And the packaging, but I can't fault them too much on that.
Yeah. All right, Dave, what do you think? Overall rating, 5.5 to 5.9. Where does she land?
I'm also going to give it the 5.8, like David. I'm not knocking it so much for the manual. I think obviously it could have been improved, but I don't think it was horrible. But I think it would have to be a little bit more powerful if I was going to give it a 5.9. Maybe one of its big brothers would land a 5.9. But no, for what you get, I think a 5.8 is pretty fair.
Sometimes things happen too in the packaging. I don't know, you were missing a piece. You had to drive considerable way to pick it up because of where you live and that sort of thing. That would have knocked a point off for me, but you don't seem to hold that part against them as much.
No,
Mistake?
it really didn't bother me a whole lot. I'd probably be going past the hardware store eventually anyway, and it cost me a quarter to get a couple nuts. And
it's frustrating, though. I get it, but it happens. Mistakes definitely happen, and things get mixed up sometimes in the packaging. I get that, but it's cool that you did not take points off for that, because that was kind of one of those little things. Well, thank you guys so much. Is there anything you guys want to add as we say goodbye to our friends? Again, this is all about taking it out of the hands of me and being the talking head and saying, it was given to me and I got it and I'm a little bit, whatever. I don't want to be that guy. I want to put it in the hands of our community. And I never felt comfortable trying to spend anybody's money. So what they're telling you is true with their experience. Is there anything that we missed? David, is there anything that we missed here that may be able to help somebody?
Nothing really missed. I do want to. I want to thank you for the opportunity to do this, and the community for supporting it as well. I really appreciate this. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about documenting things for YouTube videos. I'll give you a link to the actual build and deployment and the testing, and you can link that. I have that fully available. I'll publish it as soon as you finish the show. So thanks again for the opportunity, and I hope that others in the community get to experience the same thing.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Dave, anything that we missed here? You like to build things and you like to tinker. Is there anything that you could teach the community about this antenna that we may have missed?
No, I think we covered everything. I think in the end it really comes down to your install and how well you can put it up. If you can't put it in a good location, you'll get poor performance out of it, but give it a good chance and it's going to work.
Well, my thanks to David, Kilo Mike 6, Delta Oscar Victor, and Dave, Kilo Delta 0, Foxtrot X-Ray, for reviewing the Diamond X30. Again, if you would like to become a reviewer, you need a 100-watt ID, easy to get, and it's free. Go to 100wattsandawire.com, click the 100-watt ID tab. Simple information. I don't sell your information. You get sequentially even issued an ID from an app. And then a busy human, will send it to you in your email, so keep an eye out for that. Once you have it, go on over to the 30-day tab and sign up to be a reviewer. You only need to do it one time. You stay in. These guys will go back in there. They'll go back in the list. We do a lottery. Names are picked. I send out an invitation, and the first people to get in line are the ones who get to do the review. So that's how it is, and we want to take it off of me to be doing these reviews, because I think sometimes they can be jaded when people are given things. There's almost an underlying thing that I get to keep this, and then almost inherent that you say something great. You know what I mean? I would rather just sit and listen to the fellas talk about it, listen to the community, because it's for you guys. So thank you all for listening through that. I hope you enjoyed it, and let us know if you decide to buy this product, if you're in the market. I bet you if you had questions, these guys would answer them as well. But I think we did a pretty good job looking at it on this episode. I'll say 73 for now. To you, may the dogs run by your side, and by all means, if you can, please try and stay above the noise.
To join the 100 Watts and a Wire community, visit 100wattsandawire.com.